Hello, comrades. Thank you. Thank you very much for your invitation. I will answer, of course, to the question, why does the trade union movement have a role to play in the fight for peace? But before, I think we need to briefly look at the situation we are facing. On July the 14th, Emmanuel Macron organized a large military parade on the Champs-Élysées. The coalition of volunteers for Ukraine, which brings together French, British and German forces, saw detachments of the Ukrainian army parade alongside a unit of the French police, known for its violence and brutality in repressing demonstrators and young people from working-class neighborhoods. Zelensky, von der Leyen, Macron and his government were present. The day before, the French president made a statement. While the American aggression against Iran is once again raging, with disastrous consequences on a global scale, while in Palestine, genocide and ethnic cleansing continue with the complicity of our respective governments, Macron said, we are ready to defend freedom and law at the cost of blood, if necessary. When Macron speaks about freedom, we never forget that from the very beginning he supports and he is a complicit of the genocide of the Palestinian people. A few months earlier, his chief of the military staff, General Mandon, declared France must be ready to sacrifice its children. This is not just rhetoric. On July the 13th, Macron announced arms deliveries and the sale of weapons licenses to the Ukrainian regime. Among these weapons, French missiles which can strike deep into Russian territory. For a long time, the government hesitated to go this far because we were told we would become co-belligerents. Now, we are there. In 4 years, the war in Ukraine has caused more than 2 million deaths and casualties on both sides. It is a slaughter. It is not the corrupt, mafia-like oligarchs on either side. It is not the arms dealers and the ministers who die. It is the workers. It is the young Ukrainians and Russians sent to the butchery. And today, everything is being done to make the war last and intensify. Putin's regime needs this war. But NATO countries, the European Union, and American imperialism need this war and are investing considerable amounts of money in rearmament and militarization of our societies. Mark Rutte, NATO's current chief, has just declared, now we must run our arms factories at full capacity. Let us be clear, everything is being done to make confrontation and conflagration inevitable. While American stock markets reach valuation unseen since 1929, threatening the world with a new major crisis. Stopping this infernal spiral, imposing a radical break, is the urgent task of our time. This is what is at stake in my country in the presidential campaign and in the battle for Jean-Luc Mélenchon's victory. That is, for the victory of the candidate who campaigns to leave NATO, to stop the genocide in Palestine and the complicity of our government with the genocide, and to stop the march towards war. But at the pace things are moving today in Iran, in Ukraine, in Palestine, we cannot peacefully wait for the next election. And we would still have to win it. Everyone will agree, I believe, that we cannot gamble the future of millions of men and women on predictions. So what do we have to do? Workers and their organizations are right to organize and mobilize without delay against this destructive policy and this race towards disaster. Because in the end, it is those who will be called to war who will be able to prevent it. The First International stated, the emancipation of the workers will be the work of the workers themselves. Nothing could be more relevant today. In my country, there are now more than 10 million poor people. The last heat wave killed thousands of people in their overheated homes and in hospitals completely overwhelmed by a lack of staff and equipment. Yet, the French government, which has doubled the military budget over 10 years and had just increased it again, has just announced additional cuts of more than 10 billion euros to health, education, and housing budgets. So when French hospital workers mobilize, saying money for hospital, not for fighter jets, we stand with them. Dear comrades, the leaderships of my country's major trade union confederations were perfectly informed of the situation and the scale of the danger, do nothing beyond making statements, often discreetly. Instead, they call for political stability, for stability of the government. At times, they have been more combative. In 1914, for example, a few days before the outbreak of the First World War, the leadership of the CGT swore that it would call a general strike if governments unleashed war. But a few days later, once war was declared, it fell in line behind the sacred union, sending millions of people to die from the interests of imperialism, the arms industry, and warmongering governments. And then there were the 100,000 strikers, mainly women, notably in the munitions factories, who, without asking anyone's permission, went on strike in 1917 and 1918 under slogans combining social demands with demands for peace, going as far as to welcome the Russian Revolution, which promised to put an end to the war. The power of the organized labor movement, if correctly directed against the policy of the government and against fascism, because the fight against war is also the fight against fascism and against racism, can not only win satisfaction for workers' demands, but also put an end to the march toward war. Everything depends on the direction we give to this movement. That was true yesterday, it remains true today. Let us remember what happened last October. In Italy and in Greece, dock workers mobilized, refusing to deliver weapons to Israel. In Italy, workers took up the slogan that had been launched in France on September the 10th, calling to block everything. They said, blocchiamo tutto. On October the 3rd, more than 1 million Italian workers were on strike and demonstrating, destabilizing Giorgia Meloni's far-right government. Through their mobilization, the dock workers showed the way. And the young people who went on strike in Germany against conscription showed the way. There is no doubt that if workers in every sector were called upon to do the same against their governments, the Macron, Merz, and Bernharm's governments would be forced to back down. An awareness is growing. It is rising among activists, among the mid-level officials of trade union organizations, and it runs through unions in the hospital sector, in certain parts of industry, and in education, against the militarization programs aiming to indoctrinate young people and push them into the army. These are, for now, still modest movements, but I am certain they herald something much deeper. The congresses of the two French workers' confederations held this year were marked by the rejection of the war economy expressed by hundreds of trade unionists. I said earlier that everything depends on the direction we intend to give this movement. I had the honor of taking part and speaking, as several of you here did, at the anti-war meeting held in London on the 20th of June. And before that, at the Paris meeting which brought together 4,000 participants. That London meeting, I am convinced, marks a very important step forward on the path toward building an internationally organized force against the governments preparing for war and the war economy. Hundreds of trade unionists and union officials, British, German, Spanish, Belgian, French, among others, were present, several of them representing and speaking on behalf of their organizations. This regrouping must be strengthened. This is the urgent task of the hour, for time is running out. The London meeting put forward proposals. Alex spoke about it. This London meeting, like this conference today, is a point of support for regrouping and for action against our governments, complicit in the genocide of the Palestinian people, against our war-mongering governments that want to destroy all our social gains and our hard-won freedoms. I salute the decision of the UGT, the Spanish trade union, which has publicized the call and supports its terms and conclusions. I salute the activists gathered here today, and I say, let us have confidence in the working class and the youth of our countries. No foreign worker is our enemy. The French working class, the workers who live in my country, in France, are not the enemies of any working class, any people in any country in the world. The enemy of the working class, of the workers of my country, is the government of my country and its policies, and that holds true for all workers in every country. So comrades, solidarity, and thank you for having invited me.